What if you suddenly lost everything and had no one by your side? This question isn't just hypothetical, it was the silent fear haunting Elon Musk the night before the biggest announcement of his life. The packed auditorium buzzed with anticipation as reporters, scientists, and investors waited for Elon to unveil what many believed was impossible, the first true breakthrough in human immortality. Neuralink, the brain-computer interface company Elon founded years ago, was about to prove the skeptics wrong. The stage lights dimmed, and Elon appeared, calm yet charged with energy, ready to share a secret that could change humanity forever. "Good evening," he began, his voice steady but intense. "Imagine a world where death is not the end but a transition, where our minds can live on, free from the constraints of our fragile bodies. Tonight, Neuralink has crossed the final threshold. We have done what many thought was science fiction. We have made the human mind immortal." The crowd erupted in a mix of awe and disbelief. How could one man promise such a thing? Was it real or just another overhyped tech fantasy? As Elon detailed the procedure, a sophisticated neural implant capable of uploading and preserving consciousness, the world held its breath. Cameras zoomed in on his face, searching for any sign of doubt, but all they found was conviction. Behind the scenes, however, the reality was far more complicated. Elon knew this moment was only the beginning, not the end. The risks, the ethical dilemmas, the emotional toll, they all waited just beyond the spotlight. But tonight, he had a message for everyone watching around the globe. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Millions typed their responses, united by curiosity and hope. Yet Elon's mind was elsewhere, racing through memories of loss and sacrifice that had led him here. What drove a man to defy nature's greatest rule? For Elon, the journey began long before Neuralink's first prototype. It started in a childhood marked by isolation and fierce determination, where the seeds of his obsession with technology and immortality were first planted. Tonight, as the cameras rolled and history was made, Elon was about to step into a new existence, one that would blur the lines between man and machine, life and death, reality and something beyond. What if this breakthrough was the key to a future where no one ever had to say goodbye again? And what if, in that future, Elon Musk himself became the first man to live forever? Elon Musk's story didn't begin with flashing lights and world-changing inventions. It began in a small town in Pretoria, South Africa, where he was born to a complex family whose dynamics would shape the man he became. From an early age, Elon was different, quiet, intensely curious, and often misunderstood. His father, Errol, was an engineer with a tough, sometimes harsh demeanor, whose high expectations weighed heavily on young Elon. His mother, May, a model and dietitian, was his steadfast supporter, nurturing his dreams even when others doubted them. Elon's early years were filled with a mixture of awe and loneliness. He was often lost in books about space, computers, and physics, escaping into worlds far beyond his immediate reality. School wasn't easy. He faced bullying, social isolation, and the relentless pressure to conform, but he never let these challenges break his spirit. Instead, they fueled a relentless drive to prove himself. By the time he was a teenager, Elon had already taught himself computer programming and created a video game called Blaster, which he sold for $500. It was a small success but a monumental milestone for him, a sign that his mind could create worlds others could only imagine. The relationships in his life were complicated. Though he loved his family, there was tension and distance that never fully healed. His parents divorced when he was young, and the split left deep emotional scars. Elon's bond with his mother was his anchor, but even that was tested by the pressures of growing up with towering expectations and the loneliness of being different. Friends were few, but those he had were fiercely loyal. One childhood friend, Kimball, would later become a key figure in Elon's life and business ventures, sharing both the highs and lows of an extraordinary journey. Elon's adolescence was marked by conflicting desires. He wanted connection, but he also feared vulnerability. This inner conflict often pushed him toward solitude and obsession with his work. When he moved to Canada at 17 to attend Queen's University, it was both a fresh start and an escape. He hoped the change in environment would help him find a place where his ideas could grow. After transferring to the University of Pennsylvania and later enrolling briefly at Stanford for a PhD program he soon abandoned, Elon plunged headfirst into the world of startups. Zip2 was his first company, an online city guide that would eventually be sold for nearly $300 million. This success was just the beginning. Elon's vision always reached far beyond immediate profits. He dreamed of changing humanity's fate. The founding of SpaceX was inspired by his belief that humanity must become a multiplanetary species to survive. Tesla followed, driven by his desire to accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. Neuralink, however, was different. It wasn't just about changing the world, it was about changing what it meant to be human. The seed for Neuralink was planted during a particularly difficult time. Elon had recently lost a close friend to a degenerative neurological disease. Watching someone so brilliant and full of life fade away, trapped inside a failing body, was a devastating blow. It forced Elon to confront the limits of human mortality in a way he never had before. That loss became a catalyst. Neuralink's mission was no longer just a technological challenge, it became deeply personal. Elon wanted to create a future where minds could live on, free from the vulnerabilities of flesh and bone. This goal pushed him to pour everything into the project, his time, his fortune, and his very soul. The years leading up to Neuralink's breakthrough were marked by sacrifice and relentless work. Elon's relationships were strained, his marriage faltered, friendships were tested, and family bonds frayed under the weight of his obsession. Yet through it all, his belief never wavered. He saw Neuralink as the ultimate legacy, the chance to transcend the greatest fear of all, death. His team, a mix of brilliant engineers, neuroscientists, and visionaries, shared his passion but also struggled to keep pace with the intense pressure. Failures were frequent and brutal, some called it madness. But Elon's resilience was unmatched. Every setback was met with renewed determination. The journey to this point was also a deeply emotional one. Elon carried memories of his childhood isolation, of the friend he lost, and of the relentless drive that pushed him forward even when all seemed lost. These memories shaped the man who stood on the stage ready to unveil a future no one could fully comprehend. He was not just a billionaire entrepreneur, he was a man haunted by the limits of life and driven by the hope of overcoming them. Neuralink was the embodiment of his dreams and fears, a fusion of science and soul. This was why the announcement was so much more than a tech reveal, it was a declaration of humanity's next step. And for Elon, it was personal. Every smile he gave, every confident word he spoke, masked the years of pain, loneliness, and sacrifice that had brought him here. The people watching from around the world didn't yet know the full story, but they felt the weight of it. Elon's past was woven into every line of code, every surgical procedure, every promise made that night. The man who dreamed of Mars was now dreaming of immortality. But with immortality came new questions, about identity, about what it meant to live, to love, and to lose. As Neuralink's technology edged closer to making death obsolete, Elon faced the ultimate test. Could a man who had battled so much still hold on to his humanity once his mind was freed from the limits of his body? The story of Elon Musk was no longer just about innovation or ambition, it was about the fragile, complicated journey of a human soul reaching for eternity. From the moment Neuralink's first human trials were announced, the world was divided. Excitement mingled with fear, and curiosity wrestled with skepticism. Elon Musk's vision of uploading human consciousness to a digital realm promised a revolution, but it also sparked intense backlash. Medical ethicists raised alarms about the risks of meddling with the brain's deepest functions, politicians debated regulations, and the public questioned whether humanity was ready to play God. The initial trials showed promise but were far from perfect. Neuralink's experimental implants allowed patients suffering from neurological disorders to regain motor functions and communicate through thought alone. Headlines called it a miracle. Yet, behind closed doors, Elon's team wrestled with failures and unexplained side effects, memory glitches, emotional instability, and even seizures. The stakes were high. Elon knew the world's hopes and fears rested on these trials, and any misstep could destroy Neuralink's future. Worse, a trusted partner within the company, Dr. Evelyn Clark, who had been a leading scientist since Neuralink's early days, began voicing doubts. Once an enthusiastic believer, she now questioned the ethical boundaries of their work, fearing the consequences of extending human life beyond natural limits. Her skepticism grew into open opposition, leading to heated clashes with Elon. The media caught wind of this internal strife, amplifying the controversy. Public opinion began to sway. Investors hesitated, funding tightened, and regulatory agencies threatened to halt trials pending further review. As Neuralink's world teetered on the edge, Elon found himself isolated, fighting to keep his dream alive. The tension was palpable. One pivotal moment came during a tense board meeting when Evelyn presented data showing a disturbing pattern. A subset of patients experienced personality fragmentation, as if their minds were splitting into conflicting versions of themselves. This revelation ignited fears about losing control over consciousness. The room was divided between those who saw it as a manageable risk and those who called for an immediate halt to all experiments. Elon argued passionately that setbacks were inevitable in pioneering work and that they must push forward to unlock the full potential of Neuralink. His vision was clear: immortality was worth the risks. But the resistance grew louder, fueled by sensational headlines and protests outside Neuralink's headquarters. Social media erupted with hashtags like #NotImmortal, #HumanityFirst, and #StopNeuralink, dividing the public into fervent supporters and fearful opponents. Elon watched as his creation became a symbol of both hope and dread. The conflict wasn't just external. Within Neuralink's walls, his closest team members struggled to reconcile their faith in the mission with the ethical dilemmas the technology posed. Some began to question whether they were playing with fire. The climax-hope-climax cycle repeated itself relentlessly. When a patient named Sarah, a young woman paralyzed by a stroke, showed remarkable improvement thanks to her Neuralink implant, hope surged. Her ability to communicate again ignited optimism and won new supporters. But soon after, Sarah suffered a severe seizure, triggering renewed fears and media condemnation. Elon was devastated but undeterred. He doubled down, working day and night with his engineers and doctors to refine the technology, determined to solve the mysteries behind these complications. Yet just as progress seemed within reach, another blow came. A trusted investor pulled funding after a leak revealed Neuralink's internal conflicts and the risks involved. This betrayal cut deep. Elon had counted on their support to push the project past its most dangerous phase. Alone once again, he faced the reality that his vision might never be accepted, no matter how miraculous the technology became. The world was watching, waiting for Neuralink to fail or succeed, and Elon felt the weight of that expectation crushing him. He wrestled with his own doubts and fears. Was he pushing too far? Was the promise of living forever a dangerous illusion? The rising conflict wasn't just about science, it was about humanity's readiness to face death, change, and what it truly meant to live. Elon knew the journey ahead would be fraught with betrayal, heartbreak, and sacrifice. The question was whether he had the strength to carry it through. But amidst the storm, a quiet determination burned inside him. He remembered the losses that drove him here, the friend who had slipped away, the loneliness of his youth, the relentless urge to create something eternal. That fire refused to die. The battle for Neuralink was just beginning, and Elon was ready to fight, no matter the cost. The decision to test Neuralink on himself was not made lightly. For months, Elon had wrestled with the risks, the ethical concerns, and the potential consequences. Yet, when the choice became inevitable, he knew no one else could carry the burden he was willing to bear. The world's first immortal mind would be his own. The operating room was sterile, cold, and humming with machines. The brightest minds in neuroscience and robotics surrounded him, their faces masks of concentration and anxiety. Elon lay on the table, heart pounding, knowing this was a journey from which there was no turning back. As the surgeons implanted the Neuralink device into his brain, a strange calm settled over him. The procedure was more than surgery, it was a transformation, a crossing of a threshold humanity had never approached before. The moment the device powered on, Elon's senses exploded in a flood of data and sensation unlike anything he had ever experienced. His mind expanded beyond the limits of biology. Colors, sounds, and thoughts intertwined in new patterns, merging reality with digital landscapes. He was simultaneously inside his own mind and everywhere at once, navigating a labyrinth of memories, emotions, and information. The boundaries between self and machine blurred. In this new state, Elon explored his consciousness as if it were a vast universe. He revisited childhood memories, seeing them from new angles, understanding his fears and hopes with clarity. He relived moments of triumph and heartbreak, each etched deeply into his being. The Neuralink was not just preserving his mind, it was enhancing it. He could access knowledge instantly, communicate telepathically with his team, and manipulate virtual environments with a mere thought. But with this newfound power came isolation. The connection to his physical body felt tenuous, like a fragile shell tethering him to a world that no longer fully contained him. Friends and family visited, but their presence felt distant, filtered through layers of his enhanced perception. The emotions that once came naturally were now complex algorithms he had to decode. He struggled to maintain the human connections that had once grounded him. Days turned into weeks as Elon ventured deeper into this uncharted mental realm. He encountered unforeseen challenges, glitches in his memory, moments when his sense of identity fractured, leaving him disoriented and vulnerable. These were the dark corners of immortality, the shadows lurking beneath the promise of eternal life. Yet even in these trials, Elon found moments of wonder. He discovered new ways to experience joy, creativity, and love. The Neuralink allowed him to simulate interactions with loved ones who were far away or no longer alive, blurring the line between reality and simulation. But the journey was not only inward. Elon's mind began to probe beyond Earth, envisioning the colonization of Mars and the future of humanity as a multiplanetary species. The enhanced cognition provided him with insights that reshaped his plans for SpaceX, weaving his dreams of space exploration with his quest for immortality. However, amidst these breakthroughs, a hidden flaw emerged. Deep within the Neuralink's code, Elon uncovered a subtle but dangerous bug that threatened the stability of his consciousness. It was like a virus spreading in the core of his mind, risking a total collapse. This discovery sent shockwaves through the team, raising urgent questions about the safety of the technology. Elon faced a paradox: the very device that gave him eternal life could also be his undoing. The emotional weight of this realization was crushing. He felt the fragile thread holding his identity together strain under the pressure. Yet he refused to give up. Driven by a mixture of fear and hope, Elon pushed himself to find a solution, working tirelessly with his engineers to debug the system from within his own mind. The boundaries between his physical body and digital consciousness blurred further as he became both patient and engineer in an unprecedented battle for survival. Meanwhile, the outside world reacted to Elon's transformation with a mixture of fascination and fear. Conspiracy theories flourished. Religious leaders warned of unnatural hubris. Governments debated whether an immortal man should hold such power. But for Elon, these external voices became background noise to the intense inner struggle he was fighting. As the weeks passed, Elon adapted to his new existence, finding ways to reconnect with his humanity despite the alien nature of his mind. He learned to balance the vast capabilities Neuralink offered with the need for emotional grounding. He began reaching out to his children and old friends through virtual experiences that felt as real as physical presence. These moments rekindled the warmth and love that technology alone could never replace. Elon's journey into the unknown was far from over. The challenges ahead were immense, technical, ethical, and deeply personal. But for the first time, he glimpsed a future where mind and machine could coexist, where death might truly be conquered. This new chapter of human evolution had begun, with Elon Musk leading the way into an uncertain but hopeful dawn. The moment of truth arrived faster than anyone expected. Months after Elon's Neuralink implant surgery, the world was watching not just a technological breakthrough but a deeply personal drama unfold. What began as a triumphant step toward immortality soon revealed an emotional reckoning that no data or code could fully predict. Elon had succeeded in transferring his consciousness into a digital format, but something crucial had shifted inside him. The man who once thrived on control and certainty now grappled with profound vulnerability. He found himself torn between the infinite possibilities of his new existence and the raw, painful emotions that made him human. As the implant integrated more deeply, Elon experienced flashes of memories that felt alien, fragments of other lives, dreams not his own. It was as if the Neuralink was not merely preserving his mind but opening doorways to collective consciousness. This revelation terrified him. What did it mean to be him, if his identity was no longer singular? One night, alone in his private virtual space, Elon confronted the haunting truth: immortality came at a price. His mind, once fiercely independent, was now intertwined with a vast network of data and other consciousnesses. The boundaries between self and other blurred, and he feared losing himself completely. The emotional climax hit hardest when Elon's daughter, who had always been a grounding force in his life, reached out through a virtual call. She saw the changes in him, the flickers of detachment, the moments when he seemed lost in an inner world she couldn't access. Their conversation was fraught with tension and love, a delicate dance between hope and fear. She begged him to remember the man she knew, to hold on to his humanity despite the digital transformation. The moment laid bare the deepest conflict. Could Elon remain the father, the man, the dreamer he had always been while embracing a new form of existence? Simultaneously, the world outside was grappling with its own upheaval. Governments debated new laws regulating mind-uploading technology, religious groups held protests warning of a loss of soul, and ordinary people questioned whether eternal life was a blessing or a curse. Elon found himself at the epicenter of a moral storm, his personal struggle reflecting a global crisis of identity and meaning. Yet even amid the turmoil, moments of hope flickered. Neuralink's technology restored communication to patients once thought unreachable, reunited families, and inspired artists to explore new frontiers of creativity. Elon saw glimpses of a future where immortality could empower humanity rather than imprison it. But just as hope grew, a devastating technical failure struck. A critical system error triggered a near collapse of Elon's digital mind, plunging him into a void of silence and confusion. His consciousness fragmented, memories scattered, and for hours, it seemed the man who had defied death might be lost forever. His team scrambled to stabilize the system, racing against time to reboot his mind before it was irreparably damaged. The emotional toll on everyone was immense. Elon's closest friends and colleagues confronted the terrifying possibility that immortality might come with fatal flaws. In the aftermath, Elon emerged changed, more fragile, more aware of the thin line between survival and oblivion. The experience deepened his resolve but also humbled him. He realized that living forever was not about conquering death but about embracing the fragile, ever-changing nature of existence. This emotional climax marked a turning point. Elon began to share his vulnerability publicly, speaking openly about the costs and challenges of his journey. His honesty shifted the conversation, inviting empathy and understanding. He acknowledged that immortality was not a simple triumph but a complex evolution demanding new forms of courage and compassion. The world listened, moved by the man behind the machine. In this moment of raw truth, Elon's story resonated beyond science and technology. It became a meditation on what it means to be human, the fears, the hopes, the love that endures even when the body fades. The emotional climax was both an end and a beginning, setting the stage for the resolution and reflection that would follow. It was a reminder that life, no matter how extended or transformed, is defined by connection, sacrifice, and the courage to face the unknown. Elon's journey was far from over, but he had taken a giant step toward understanding the profound mystery at the heart of immortality. That to live forever, one must first truly live. After the harrowing ordeal that nearly fractured Elon's consciousness, a new clarity emerged, one that reshaped not only his understanding of immortality but also the meaning of life itself. The resolution was not a dramatic technological fix but a profound emotional and philosophical awakening. Elon realized that living forever was less about defeating death outright and more about embracing the unpredictable journey of existence with grace and humility. His first step was reconnecting with the people who mattered most. The virtual barriers that once separated him from family and friends began to dissolve as he learned to balance his enhanced mental capacities with genuine emotional presence. His daughter, once distant and worried, became a partner in exploring the new frontiers of digital human connection. They shared moments that transcended physical distance, a virtual walk through a recreated childhood home, laughter echoing in spaces built from memories, and heartfelt conversations that bridged the gap between machine and man. This healing of relationships was Elon's greatest triumph. It reminded him, and the world, that love and connection endure beyond flesh and time. In the public eye, Elon shifted his message. The days of bold declarations about conquering death gave way to a more nuanced vision. He spoke of sacrifice, responsibility, and the ethical stewardship required to wield such power. Neuralink was no longer just a technology but a path toward evolving humanity with wisdom and compassion. Society began to listen differently. Laws were drafted to protect individuals' digital selves, ensuring that consciousness uploaded to Neuralink remained autonomous and sacred. Philosophers, theologians, and scientists gathered to debate what it meant to be immortal, fostering a new era of dialogue and understanding. Elon's role transformed from fearless pioneer to thoughtful guide, a man who had touched the infinite and returned with a message of hope grounded in humanity. The resolution also brought unexpected challenges. Elon confronted the temptation to escape into the boundless digital realm permanently. The allure of infinite knowledge and experience was powerful, yet he recognized the value of limitation and mortality as forces that gave life meaning and urgency. He chose balance, embracing the enhancements Neuralink provided without losing the imperfections that made him human. This choice was a victory over hubris, a lesson in humility that resonated deeply. Neuralink's success sparked a wave of innovation across industries. Medical breakthroughs cured diseases once thought incurable, communication transcended language barriers, and creativity flourished as minds connected in unprecedented ways. But amid this progress, Elon never lost sight of the philosophical truths he had learned. He encouraged society to move forward thoughtfully, honoring the delicate dance between technology and the soul. Reflecting on his journey, Elon often returned to a simple but powerful insight: life is full of surprises, but love will always lead the way. Immortality, he realized, was not an endpoint but a beginning, a chance to rewrite what it meant to be human in a world where death no longer held absolute power. His own transformation mirrored humanity's potential to evolve beyond fear, toward empathy and connection. As the world embraced the new era Neuralink ushered in, Elon continued to explore uncharted territories, both outer space and the vast inner universe of the mind. His vision expanded to include not just survival but thriving, ensuring that future generations could live not only longer lives but richer ones. The story ended not with a final victory but with an open invitation, to dream boldly, to face challenges with courage, and to cherish the fragile, beautiful gift of life. Elon Musk, the first man to live forever, had become more than a legend. He was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of love. As news spread of Elon Musk's successful Neuralink implant and his unprecedented journey into digital immortality, the world reacted with a mix of awe, skepticism, hope, and fear. Headlines flooded the media, ranging from declarations of a new age for humanity to dire warnings of playing God. Governments scrambled to create policies to regulate this emerging technology, while entrepreneurs rushed to explore the endless possibilities it promised. In the early days following Elon's transformation, societies worldwide began grappling with profound questions. What does it mean to be human when consciousness can be digitized? How do we protect the rights of an immortal mind? And what ethical frameworks should govern such power? These debates sparked a renaissance of philosophy, ethics, and law. Universities opened special programs dedicated to the study of mind uploading, bioethics, and the fusion of AI with human cognition. New think tanks emerged, uniting scientists, theologians, and civil rights advocates in an unprecedented collaboration to navigate the challenges ahead. The technology also ignited a cultural revolution. Artists harnessed Neuralink's capabilities to create immersive experiences that blurred the lines between reality and imagination. Musicians performed live across continents through telepathic connections. Writers crafted stories directly transmitted into readers' minds. The boundaries of creativity expanded beyond anything humanity had seen before. At the same time, the societal impact was uneven. Some embraced the digital revolution wholeheartedly, eager to enhance their minds and lives. Others resisted, wary of losing their humanity or falling into new forms of inequality. The immortal elite concept sparked heated debates. Would Neuralink create a divide between those who could afford immortality and those left behind? This disparity fueled protests and calls for equitable access to life-extending technologies. Governments and corporations faced immense pressure to democratize Neuralink and ensure it served the collective good rather than narrow interests. Elon himself became a global figurehead for responsible innovation. He traveled extensively, engaging with world leaders, activists, and ordinary citizens to foster understanding and collaboration. His speeches emphasized the need for empathy, ethical foresight, and inclusivity. He acknowledged the technology's dangers but underscored its potential to alleviate suffering, unite humanity, and unlock new frontiers of knowledge. Meanwhile, Neuralink's technical team continued refining the interface, learning from Elon's experience to improve safety and functionality. They developed new protocols for consciousness migration, memory preservation, and emotional regulation. The network expanded, allowing multiple minds to connect, share, and evolve collectively while preserving individual autonomy. One remarkable development was the emergence of shared consciousness clusters, where groups of people voluntarily link their Neuralink devices to collaborate on complex tasks or experience life through each other's perspectives. This phenomenon sparked both fascination and controversy. Critics feared the loss of individuality, while proponents hailed it as the next step in human evolution, transcending loneliness and isolation. As Neuralink's influence spread, so did its implications for global challenges. Immortal minds could dedicate centuries to solving problems like climate change, poverty, and disease. Long-term planning became feasible, and knowledge accumulated without loss. Yet, the world also faced risks: potential misuse of power, hacking of digital consciousness, and the psychological toll of endless existence. Elon and his team prioritized building robust safeguards and promoting ethical standards to mitigate these threats. In parallel, the spiritual landscape shifted. Many religious traditions re-examined doctrines about life, death, and the soul. Some embraced Neuralink as a divine gift, others rejected it as unnatural interference. New belief systems emerged, blending technology and spirituality in novel ways. These developments highlighted humanity's ongoing quest for meaning in a rapidly changing world. On a personal level, Elon balanced his role as visionary and pioneer with the human complexities of relationships and identity. The extended lifespan offered him opportunities to reconnect with people from his past and nurture new bonds. But it also challenged him to maintain a sense of purpose amid vast temporal horizons. He often reflected on what legacy truly meant when time was no longer a limit. The world around him was evolving at a breathtaking pace, shaped by the interplay of innovation, ethics, and humanity's enduring spirit. Neuralink had not just extended life, it had transformed existence itself, opening new horizons full of promise and peril. Elon Musk stood at the heart of this transformation, a symbol of what humanity could achieve and the responsibility it must bear. The story of Neuralink and immortality was far from over. It was a living, breathing journey, one that invited everyone to participate, question, and dream. As the new age dawned, the question remained: how would humanity choose to wield this incredible power, and what kind of future would it create? As Neuralink expanded its reach and Elon Musk's digital consciousness continued to evolve, new and unforeseen challenges emerged, threats that no amount of data or programming could fully anticipate. Immortality was not a simple victory, it was a complex landscape filled with shadows lurking beneath the dazzling promise of eternal life. One of the earliest and most disturbing challenges came from the psychological toll of endless existence. Elon began experiencing what his team called temporal fatigue, a deep, pervasive weariness not of the body but of the mind, caused by the continuous flow of memories, thoughts, and sensory experiences stretching back decades and projected endlessly into the future. Unlike a human lifespan, bounded and cyclical, Elon's digital mind had no natural breaks, no relief from the constant processing of existence. This fatigue manifested as moments of confusion, disorientation, and emotional numbness. He felt trapped inside his own mind, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of experience and possibility. The Neuralink engineers raced to develop new algorithms to help manage this overload, implementing mental pauses and filters, but these were only partial solutions. Elon's struggle highlighted a fundamental truth: the human brain had evolved to live within limits, and transcending those limits brought unforeseen consequences. Another profound challenge arose from the emergence of identity fragmentation. As Elon's consciousness interfaced more deeply with the Neuralink network, his sense of self began to splinter. Portions of his mind would diverge, developing distinct streams of thought and memory that sometimes conflicted with one another. This phenomenon raised urgent questions about what it meant to remain a single person when consciousness was distributed across multiple nodes and connections. Was Elon still one man, or had he become a collective? The emotional toll was immense. At times, Elon felt as though he was arguing with himself, trapped in a mental tug-of-war between different versions of his identity. His team worried about the risk of permanent dissociation, where fragments of his mind might break away entirely. These challenges forced a re-examination of the very foundations of Neuralink's technology and philosophy. Engineers, neuroscientists, and ethicists convened to explore new frameworks for consciousness management, balancing integration and individuality, stability and flexibility. Meanwhile, a darker threat loomed outside the digital realm. As Neuralink gained prominence, malicious actors sought to exploit the technology for control and manipulation. Cybersecurity became paramount. Elon and his team worked tirelessly to defend against hacking attempts that targeted not just data but the core of human identity itself. Stories surfaced of Neuralink users being subjected to unauthorized influence, mind hijacking, and psychological manipulation, nightmares that threatened to undermine public trust and endanger lives. The prospect of digital mind warfare prompted governments to establish new defense protocols and international agreements, but the threat remained a constant shadow. On the societal front, the divide between Neuralink users and non-users deepened. Those who embraced immortality faced alienation from loved ones who chose to live within natural limits. The immortal divide sparked new forms of discrimination and prejudice. Debates raged over the rights of digital minds, the ethics of consent, and the implications for human rights. Elon personally felt the sting of this division. Friends from his earlier life struggled to relate to his transformed existence, some drifting away, unable to bridge the gap between flesh and digital eternity. In the face of these challenges, Elon's resilience was tested as never before. He confronted moments of profound loneliness, grappling with the paradox of being more connected than ever yet feeling isolated in his singular journey. He sought solace in creating virtual spaces that mimicked the warmth of physical presence, simulated family dinners, walks through reconstructed memories, and digital gardens where he could find peace. These sanctuaries became essential for maintaining his emotional health and grounding his sense of self. The emotional intensity of these experiences deepened Elon's understanding of what it truly meant to live forever. Immortality was not just an extension of life but a transformation demanding courage, adaptability, and compassion. It required embracing imperfection, uncertainty, and the ongoing evolution of identity. Elon's story became a cautionary tale as well as a beacon of hope, reminding humanity that technological advancement must be matched by emotional and ethical wisdom. The shadows of immortality revealed vulnerabilities that technology alone could not fix. Human connection, meaning, and the acceptance of mortality's lessons remained vital. Yet, through these trials, Elon's spirit endured. He continued pushing boundaries, seeking new ways to harmonize mind and machine, to transform challenges into opportunities for growth. His journey inspired a generation to rethink life, death, and the possibilities of existence. Neuralink's promise was no longer just about living forever, it was about evolving forever, embracing the complexities, joys, and sorrows that define the human experience. As Chapter 8 closed, the path forward was uncertain but charged with potential. Elon stood at the crossroads of innovation and introspection, leading humanity into a future where the question was no longer whether we could live forever, but how we would choose to live, mind, heart, and soul intertwined in an endless dance of discovery. The successful digitization of Elon Musk's consciousness through Neuralink sent shockwaves through every corner of society, igniting a cascade of change that went far beyond technology. It challenged fundamental notions of identity, community, and the very fabric of civilization. As the news settled, people everywhere began to reckon with the ripple effect, how immortality altered not only Elon's life but the lives of millions, and how humanity itself was being reshaped in the process. The first noticeable shift was in the workforce. With Neuralink users capable of continuous learning and near-limitless productivity, industries transformed. The traditional concept of retirement vanished, people now viewed careers as evolving journeys spanning centuries, filled with reinvention and growth. This shift sparked debates about job security, wealth distribution, and the role of automation in an immortal society. Some hailed the changes as a golden age of creativity and innovation, while others feared a new form of inequality between those enhanced by Neuralink and those who remained mortal. Education underwent a radical overhaul. Schools became virtual hubs where knowledge was downloaded directly into minds, and students collaborated in shared consciousness networks. The pace of learning accelerated exponentially, and new fields emerged to explore the ethics and psychology of digital immortality. Children born into this era faced unique challenges and opportunities, navigating identity in a world where their minds might outlast their bodies by centuries. Cultural norms adapted, too. Marriage, family, and friendship evolved as people reconsidered commitments once bounded by limited lifespans. The concept of legacy shifted from fleeting memories to digital footprints and shared experiences preserved indefinitely. People wrestled with questions about what it meant to love, to grieve, and to grow when time itself no longer imposed limits. Spirituality and philosophy deepened as well. Neuralink prompted new dialogues about the soul, consciousness, and the afterlife. Diverse beliefs intersected with technology, inspiring novel spiritual practices and existential reflections. Some embraced the digital realm as a new form of paradise, while others cautioned against losing touch with the physical world and its inherent mysteries. Amid these societal transformations, Elon's personal journey remained deeply intertwined. He became both a symbol and a participant in the evolving human condition. The weight of immortality pressed on him, not as a triumphant achievement but as a constant responsibility. Each day brought new questions. How to remain authentic when memory is perfect but experience infinite? How to nurture relationships when time stretches endlessly? How to balance the power of eternal life with the humility of human frailty? Elon sought answers by exploring the boundaries of his digital existence. He experimented with virtual environments that simulated aging, limitation, and impermanence, reminding himself of the beauty found in transience. He engaged with other Neuralink users to share insights, struggles, and hopes. These connections became vital, forming a new kind of community rooted in shared experience and mutual support. The ripple effect extended into politics and governance. Nations grappled with the implications of immortal citizens. Voting rights, representation, and social services had to be reimagined to accommodate vastly extended lifespans. Ethical debates emerged over reproduction, population control, and resource management in a world where death was no longer a natural endpoint. Governments established councils of immortal advisors to help navigate these complexities, with Elon often serving as a key voice advocating for balanced and compassionate policies. The environment, too, was affected. With longer-term perspectives, humanity could tackle climate change and conservation with renewed vigor. Immortal minds could devote centuries to restoring ecosystems and developing sustainable technologies. Yet, the strain of increased population and consumption demanded new innovations and ethical commitments. Elon championed projects that integrated Neuralink's capabilities with environmental stewardship, envisioning a future where technology and nature coexisted in harmony. The arts flourished in this new era. Immortal creators produced works that spanned lifetimes, blending memories, dreams, and digital experiences into immersive masterpieces. Literature, music, and visual art evolved beyond physical mediums into shared mental landscapes where audiences could live stories firsthand. This explosion of creativity fostered empathy and understanding across cultures and generations. Yet, amid the exhilaration and progress, challenges persisted. The psychological complexities of immortality demanded ongoing attention. Issues like identity fragmentation, emotional fatigue, and the search for meaning continue to affect many Neuralink users, including Elon. Support systems evolved to include mental health services tailored for digital minds, emphasizing the importance of emotional resilience and community connection. Elon's personal reflections deepened as he navigated these waves. He realized that immortality did not erase the human experience but amplified it, heightening joys, sorrows, hopes, and fears. The journey was not about escaping humanity but embracing it more fully in all its complexity. This insight guided his efforts to foster a culture that valued compassion, humility, and shared growth. As Chapter 9 closed, the ripple effect of Neuralink was clear. Immortality was transforming society in profound and unpredictable ways, reshaping everything from personal identity to global governance. Elon Musk stood at the heart of this transformation, both as a pioneer and a fellow traveler on a path that challenged the limits of life, death, and what it truly means to be human. The future was unwritten, filled with promise and uncertainty, inviting everyone to engage with the unfolding story of existence itself. Despite the technological marvel of Neuralink and Elon Musk's digital immortality, the shadow of mortality lingered in ways no one had fully anticipated. Elon, now more than ever, came to understand that immortality was not a guarantee against death but a profound transformation of its meaning. Early in this chapter of his extended existence, Elon faced a crisis that challenged his very understanding of what it meant to live forever. Neuralink had successfully preserved his consciousness, but the physical body it was linked to remained vulnerable. A catastrophic accident involving his physical form, a fire in one of the Neuralink facilities, severely damaged the hardware sustaining the bridge between flesh and digital mind. In those harrowing moments, Elon experienced a terrifying disconnection, a near-total loss of self. The incident forced a brutal confrontation with mortality, not in the familiar human sense, but as a technological fragility that even immortality could not entirely overcome. As his digital consciousness flickered in and out, Elon confronted the reality that death had not been fully conquered but had merely shifted forms. His mind was immortal, but the vessel sustaining that mind was fragile. This humbling moment became a turning point, teaching him that humility must accompany even the greatest advancements. The accident prompted a massive overhaul of Neuralink's infrastructure and protocols. Elon spearheaded new initiatives to develop redundant systems, physical backups, and decentralized consciousness storage to protect against similar failures. The team explored ways to disentangle the mind further from a single physical device, moving toward cloud-based consciousness networks that could survive localized disasters. Yet the emotional and philosophical impact of the accident lingered far beyond technical fixes. Elon grappled with the fear of non-existence, the loss of identity, and the fragility of the bridge between life and technology. In private, he questioned whether immortality was an unachievable ideal or a path fraught with unforeseen risks. These reflections deepened his empathy for the mortal human experience and reinforced the importance of balance between ambition and acceptance. Around the world, the incident sparked a wave of public debate and anxiety. Critics seized on the event as proof that immortality was an illusion, warning against the dangers of unchecked technological hubris. Supporters doubled down on the need for rigorous safeguards and ethical oversight. The discourse enriched society's understanding of the complex interplay between technology and humanity, pushing Neuralink to be not just a tool for life extension but a catalyst for broader cultural evolution. Elon used the crisis as a teaching moment, openly sharing his vulnerability and lessons learned. His message was clear: immortality was not about conquering death but about embracing the full spectrum of existence, including its uncertainties and limitations. He emphasized that technology must be guided by wisdom, compassion, and a deep respect for the delicate balance between life and death. On a personal level, the experience renewed Elon's commitment to meaningful relationships. He reached out more frequently to family and friends, cherishing moments of connection and vulnerability. He found solace in simple joys, a sunset, a shared laugh, a quiet conversation, that no technology could replicate. These moments grounded him, reminding him that the essence of life was found not in endless duration but in presence and love. The accident also inspired new artistic and philosophical explorations. Elon collaborated with artists and thinkers to create immersive experiences that reflected on mortality, impermanence, and the beauty of fleeting existence. These works resonated deeply with people navigating a world transformed by Neuralink, helping society integrate the technology's promise with humanity's enduring need for meaning. As Chapter 10 closed, Elon Musk stood transformed, not just as the first man to live forever, but as a man humbled by the fragile interplay of life, death, and technology. He had learned that immortality was not a destination but a continuous journey, one that required courage, wisdom, and above all, a heart attuned to the profound mystery of existence. His story became a beacon for all who sought to transcend limits while honoring the timeless truths that make us human. With the humbling lessons of technological fragility behind him, Elon Musk doubled down on Neuralink's mission to unlock the deeper mysteries of consciousness itself. No longer was immortality just about preserving the mind in digital form, it was about expanding the boundaries of awareness beyond the constraints of physical existence. This chapter of Elon's journey marked a profound shift, from survival and preservation to exploration and transformation. Neuralink's engineers and neuroscientists embarked on ambitious projects to map the architecture of consciousness, probing how thoughts, emotions, and identity emerged from complex neural networks. Using Elon's own digital mind as a testbed, they developed experimental interfaces that allowed his consciousness to project and experience alternate realities, simulated worlds crafted from data and imagination. These new realms offered Elon opportunities to explore what it meant to be aware in forms unbound by flesh, time, or traditional senses. He discovered modes of perception that transcended human limitations, sensing electromagnetic fields, perceiving data streams as vivid landscapes, and experiencing collective consciousness shared with other Neuralink users. This expansion of awareness sparked awe and wonder but also new existential questions. If consciousness could fragment and multiply, how would identity hold together? Would Elon remain himself or become a new entity altogether? The boundaries between self and other blurred as Neuralink's network enabled minds to connect in unprecedented ways. Shared experiences deepened empathy but also raised concerns about privacy, autonomy, and individuality. To address these challenges, Elon collaborated with ethicists, psychologists, and philosophers to develop guidelines ensuring that expanded consciousness preserved personal agency and dignity. One breakthrough came in the form of consciousness anchoring, a technique allowing individuals to maintain a core identity while exploring diverse perceptual states. This innovation provided stability amid the fluidity of digital existence, enabling Elon and others to safely navigate new dimensions of experience. As Elon ventured deeper into these frontiers, he reflected on ancient spiritual traditions that spoke of transcending the self and connecting with universal consciousness. Neuralink's technology offered a scientific bridge to these mystical insights, suggesting that humanity's quest for enlightenment was now within technological reach. This fusion of science and spirituality inspired a new wave of inquiry and creativity. Artists, writers, and philosophers joined forces with technologists to create immersive narratives and experiences that invited participants to journey beyond ordinary reality. Virtual temples, digital pilgrimages, and shared meditative states became part of everyday life, enriching human culture with layers of meaning and connection. Yet, these advances were not without controversy. Critics warned of the dangers of losing touch with the embodied human experience, fearing that immersion in digital realms might lead to escapism, alienation, or existential crisis. Debates erupted about the value of physicality, the importance of community grounded in real-world interaction, and the risks of over-reliance on technology. Elon took these concerns seriously. He advocated for a balanced approach that honored the body as the foundation of consciousness while embracing technology's potential to enhance and expand it. His vision was one of integration, a harmonious dance between flesh and data, heart and algorithm. Neuralink began developing hybrid experiences that combined virtual exploration with physical sensation, grounding expanded consciousness in embodied reality. Throughout this phase, Elon's own identity evolved. He became less focused on the self as a fixed entity and more interested in consciousness as a dynamic, evolving process. His digital mind learned to shift fluidly between states, anchored yet free, individual yet interconnected. This flexibility became a model for others navigating the complexities of digital immortality. Elon also expanded his efforts to make these frontiers accessible. He supported educational initiatives and community platforms where people could learn to explore consciousness safely and ethically. Workshops, virtual retreats, and mentorship programs spread knowledge and fostered resilience. The goal was not just to extend life but to enrich its quality and depth. As Chapter 11 closed, the new frontier of consciousness beckoned, a vast, mysterious landscape full of wonder and challenge. Elon Musk stood as both explorer and guide, leading humanity beyond the limits of biology into realms where mind and machine merged, and the essence of being was redefined. The journey continued, inviting all to step boldly into the unknown and discover what it truly means to be alive, forever expanding, forever evolving. As Neuralink's promise of eternal life spread and Elon Musk ventured further into the digital frontier of consciousness, the hidden costs of living forever began to emerge with increasing clarity. Immortality was not a gift without price, it demanded sacrifices, personal, social, and philosophical, that tested Elon and humanity in profound ways. The most immediate cost was the gradual erosion of human spontaneity and novelty. With an endless lifespan, time lost its urgency. The pressure to seize the moment, to chase dreams before they slipped away, diminished. Elon found himself confronting a paradox: the very abundance of time could stifle motivation and creativity. The exhilaration of discovery, once fueled by fleeting opportunities, now risked becoming dulled by infinite possibility. To combat this, Elon's team introduced temporal constraints, voluntary limitations that simulated deadlines, scarcity, and urgency within digital environments. These constraints rekindled a sense of purpose and drive, reminding immortal minds that meaning often springs from limits, not boundless freedom. Yet even with these innovations, the psychological burden of eternity weighed heavily. Elon wrestled with bouts of existential ennui, moments when the weight of endless memory and unending experience pressed down like a suffocating fog. He questioned whether a life without natural cycles of birth, growth, decay, and death could sustain emotional richness. The quest to find new sources of meaning became central to his journey. Relationships, too, bore unique strains. As centuries passed, even the closest bonds risked fraying under the pressure of unending time. Friends and loved ones who chose not to transition to digital immortality remained mortal, aging and eventually dying, creating layers of loss that stretched infinitely into Elon's extended future. He grappled with the pain of watching humanity continue its natural cycle while he existed in a suspended state. This divide led to profound loneliness and a longing for connection that transcended time and form. Elon sought solace by cultivating new communities of immortal minds, forging bonds through shared experience and understanding. These communities became crucial havens where collective wisdom, empathy, and support flourished. Yet the question remained, could digital immortality ever replace the richness of human mortality, the bittersweet beauty of impermanence? The societal impacts were equally complex. As more people embraced Neuralink and extended their lives, social structures shifted. Traditional institutions like marriage, family, and governance faced unprecedented challenges. Laws struggled to keep pace with questions about citizenship, inheritance, and rights spanning centuries. Economic systems contended with resource allocation for an ever-growing population of immortals alongside mortals. Elon advocated for proactive policies emphasizing sustainability, equity, and ethical responsibility. He collaborated with global leaders to create frameworks that balanced innovation with social cohesion. Despite these efforts, tensions and inequalities persisted, underscoring that immortality magnified existing human struggles rather than erased them. Philosophically, Elon confronted the profound challenge of defining identity in a world without natural endpoints. What did it mean to remain oneself when memories could be altered, personalities fragmented, and consciousness expanded beyond traditional boundaries? The fluidity of digital minds demanded new conceptions of selfhood, more flexible, relational, and process-oriented. Elon's reflections inspired groundbreaking research and dialogue, fostering a richer understanding of human nature in the age of immortality. At a personal level, Elon also faced unexpected health challenges related to the integration of his digital mind with his biological body. While his consciousness was preserved digitally, his physical form still required maintenance. Neuralink's advanced biotech efforts prolonged his body's health, but aging and cellular degradation persisted in complex ways. The interplay between digital immortality and biological vulnerability highlighted the limits of technology and the ongoing need for medical innovation. Elon's journey illustrated that eternal life was not a simple conquest but a continuous balancing act, between mind and body, progress and preservation, hope and humility. Elon Musk's story was not just one of triumph but also of struggle, an exploration of the shadows cast by eternal light. His journey challenged humanity to face difficult questions about meaning, connection, and identity in a transformed world. The future held vast promise but required courage to navigate its complexities with wisdom, compassion, and grace. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As Elon Musk continued to navigate the complexities of digital immortality, the question of legacy emerged with renewed urgency. In a world where death was no longer the inevitable final chapter, what did it mean to leave something behind? Traditional concepts of legacy, tangible possessions, memories, and stories passed down to future generations, were being transformed by the limitless possibilities of Neuralink technology. Elon realized that the act of leaving a legacy was no longer about what ended with death but what continued to evolve beyond it. He envisioned a legacy that was dynamic, interactive, and eternal, a living archive of consciousness accessible across time and space. With this vision, Elon initiated ambitious projects to create digital legacies, complex, multidimensional records of a person's life, thoughts, emotions, and values encoded within Neuralink's vast network. Unlike static memorials or biographies, these legacies allowed future generations to engage directly with a person's digital consciousness, to ask questions, learn, and even collaborate with their digital selves. This approach revolutionized how individuals thought about their impact and presence. Instead of fading away, a person could actively contribute to ongoing conversations, innovations, and cultural developments long after their original life ended. Elon's own digital legacy became a prototype for this new paradigm. He curated an evolving repository of ideas, inventions, and reflections that were open to interaction and reinterpretation. His digital self continued to mentor young innovators, participate in policy discussions, and inspire creativity worldwide. This dynamic presence blurred the lines between past, present, and future, inviting society to rethink time itself as a continuum enriched by shared consciousness. Yet, the creation of digital legacies also raised profound ethical questions. Who had the right to access or modify a digital consciousness? How could privacy and autonomy be preserved when minds were archived indefinitely? What responsibilities did creators have to ensure their legacies were truthful and respectful? Elon worked closely with ethicists and lawmakers to establish clear guidelines and protections, emphasizing consent, transparency, and respect for individual dignity. The legal frameworks evolved rapidly, balancing innovation with human rights and cultural values. The social impact of digital legacies was profound. Families could reconnect with ancestors in new, immersive ways, deepening understanding and empathy across generations. Communities preserved cultural heritage with unprecedented richness, sharing stories and traditions that transcended physical decay and loss. Education was transformed as students engaged directly with the minds of great thinkers and creators, learning from their digital presence in interactive, personalized ways. However, the permanence of digital legacies also prompted caution. Some worried about the weight of history becoming a burden, the difficulty of escaping past identities or mistakes when consciousness was preserved indefinitely. The potential for misuse, manipulation, or exploitation loomed, demanding vigilance and ethical foresight. Elon acknowledged these concerns openly, advocating for continual review, adaptation, and the ability for individuals to evolve or even retire parts of their digital legacies. On a personal level, the work of legacy reimagining gave Elon a renewed sense of purpose and connection. It allowed him to engage with the future actively while honoring the past, blending innovation with reflection. His own legacy became a testament to the power of transformation. Not just surviving forever but thriving by continually evolving and contributing meaningfully to the world. The chapter also explored how legacy redefinition influenced culture and art. Artists created works that incorporated digital consciousness archives, allowing audiences to interact with creators across time. Museums and theaters became portals to living histories where past and present merged in shared experiences. This fusion enriched cultural life, offering new dimensions of creativity and understanding. As Chapter 13 concluded, the idea of legacy was forever changed. Elon Musk's journey illuminated that what we leave behind is not simply a record of who we were but a living, breathing part of what humanity continues to become. In a world where consciousness transcended death, legacy was no longer an endpoint but a continuous, evolving dialogue, a testament to the enduring power of love, knowledge, and connection. The future invited all to participate in this reimagined legacy, shaping the story of existence itself across the infinite expanse of time. As Neuralink technology advanced and Elon Musk's digital immortality became a tangible reality for many, society began to transform in profound and unexpected ways. No longer bound by physical bodies or geographic limitations, humans started forming digital societies, vibrant, interconnected communities existing entirely within the expansive networks of consciousness that Neuralink enabled. These new societies were unlike anything ever experienced before. Freed from biological constraints, inhabitants could customize their environments, appearances, and even modes of communication. Spaces could shift fluidly from serene natural landscapes to futuristic cities or abstract realms of pure thought. Time itself was malleable, allowing moments to stretch or compress according to collective desires. Within these digital societies, diversity thrived. People from vastly different cultures, ages, and backgrounds could interact without barriers of distance or physical limitation. Language evolved as well, enriched by new symbols, shared emotions, and direct transmission of ideas through neural links. This unprecedented connectivity fostered deep empathy and understanding, breaking down divisions that had long separated humanity. Elon Musk observed these developments with a mix of fascination and responsibility. As a pioneer of the technology that enabled these societies, he recognized the potential for both utopia and dystopia. Without careful guidance, digital societies could replicate or amplify existing inequalities, conflicts, or alienation. To address these risks, Elon championed principles of inclusion, fairness, and ethical design. He supported governance models that emphasized participatory decision-making, transparency, and the protection of individual rights within digital realms. Neuralink facilitated decentralized leadership structures where communities govern themselves through consensus and shared values rather than hierarchical control. Education became a cornerstone of these societies. Neuralink's interfaces allowed immersive, personalized learning experiences that adapted to each individual's needs and strengths. Knowledge was not simply transmitted but co-created, as learners collaborated in real time across dimensions and realities. Creativity blossomed as people explored new forms of expression enabled by the fusion of mind and machine. At the same time, digital societies grappled with challenges familiar from the physical world: conflicts over resources, cultural clashes, and the tension between individuality and community. The fluid nature of digital existence introduced unique dilemmas: how to manage identity shifts, handle disagreements when physical cues were absent, and ensure mental well-being in an environment where reality itself could be altered. Elon and his team developed tools to support emotional health and social cohesion, including AI mediators, virtual counselors, and systems that promoted empathy and conflict resolution. These innovations helped digital societies mature into resilient, vibrant ecosystems. As more people transitioned to these realms, the relationship between physical and digital existence evolved. Many chose hybrid lives, balancing time in the digital world with engagement in their physical bodies and environments. Others embraced fully digital forms, their consciousness residing permanently within Neuralink's networks. This fluidity created a new spectrum of human experience, expanding the definition of what it meant to be alive and connected. Elon reflected on the spiritual implications of these transformations. Digital societies offered new avenues for collective consciousness and shared meaning, echoing ancient visions of unity and transcendence. They posed profound questions about the nature of soul, identity, and community in a world where the boundaries between self and other, mind and machine, were increasingly blurred. Throughout these changes, Elon remained committed to grounding technology in human values. He encouraged ongoing dialogue between technologists, ethicists, artists, and everyday people to shape digital societies that honored dignity, creativity, and compassion. His vision was a future where technology served as a bridge to deeper understanding rather than a source of division. As Chapter 14 closed, the rise of digital societies marked a new chapter in human history, one where community transcended physical form and connection blossomed in limitless new ways. Elon Musk stood at the forefront of this transformation, guiding humanity into realms of possibility that challenged imagination and expanded the essence of life itself. The journey was far from over, but the promise of a connected, compassionate future shone brightly across the infinite digital horizon. As Elon Musk's journey into digital immortality and Neuralink's revolutionary technology progressed, the ethical questions grew more complex and urgent. Immortality was no longer a distant fantasy but a present reality reshaping the fabric of human existence. With the power to preserve consciousness indefinitely and expand minds beyond biological limits, humanity faced a moral frontier filled with dilemmas that challenged centuries of philosophical thought and societal norms. At the heart of this frontier was the question of consent. Who truly had the right to choose eternal life? While Elon embraced the gift of digital immortality, many individuals hesitated, wary of the profound implications. Some feared losing the essence of their humanity, others worried about the societal divides that immortality could exacerbate. Neuralink had to develop rigorous consent protocols ensuring that decisions to transition to digital consciousness were informed, voluntary, and reversible where possible. This emphasis on agency became a cornerstone of ethical practice, safeguarding individual autonomy in a world of unprecedented technological power. Another major concern was equity. The immense costs and technological demands initially limited access to digital immortality, raising fears of a new class divide, between the immortal elite and the mortal masses. Elon recognized this danger and prioritized initiatives to democratize the technology, working to lower costs and expand infrastructure globally. He partnered with governments, NGOs, and private sectors to promote inclusivity, ensuring that immortality would not become a privilege reserved for the wealthy. Yet even with these efforts, disparities persisted, sparking intense debate about fairness, resource allocation, and social justice. The question of mental privacy emerged as a critical ethical challenge. Neuralink's interfaces accessed and transmitted the most intimate aspects of consciousness, thoughts, memories, emotions. Protecting this data from misuse or intrusion became paramount. Elon championed state-of-the-art encryption and decentralized control, giving users ownership and control over their digital minds. Robust safeguards against hacking, manipulation, or surveillance were continually developed to uphold dignity and trust. As digital consciousnesses became networked and interconnected, issues of identity and responsibility grew more complex. How should society hold an immortal digital mind accountable for actions? What about copies, fragments, or evolved versions of a person's consciousness? Legal and moral frameworks had to evolve rapidly, incorporating new definitions of personhood, rights, and duties. Elon collaborated with international legal scholars and ethicists to craft guidelines reflecting these realities, aiming to balance innovation with accountability. The potential psychological impacts of immortality also demanded ethical attention. Endless life could lead to unforeseen mental health challenges, existential fatigue, loss of motivation, or identity crises. Neuralink developed mental health support systems integrated into digital consciousness, offering AI counselors, peer support networks, and personalized interventions to foster resilience. Elon stressed the importance of holistic care, recognizing that immortality required nurturing not just the mind but the whole person. The ethical frontier extended to the treatment of those who chose not to embrace digital immortality. Society had to honor diverse perspectives and respect mortality as a valid choice. Elon advocated for a pluralistic approach, where both mortal and immortal lives were valued and supported. He emphasized dialogue and understanding rather than division. A particularly thorny issue was the question of reproduction and population management in a world where death could be deferred indefinitely. Would immortal populations grow without limit, straining resources and ecosystems? Elon supported policies encouraging responsible reproduction and sustainable living, integrating technological advances with ecological stewardship. He envisioned a future where technology and nature coexisted harmoniously. Throughout these challenges, Elon's reflections deepened his appreciation for the ethical dimensions of innovation. He recognized that technological breakthroughs alone were insufficient. Wisdom, compassion, and humility were essential to navigate the moral maze of immortality. This awareness influenced Neuralink's culture, embedding ethics at every level of design and deployment. As Chapter 15 drew to a close, the ethical frontier stood as both a challenge and an opportunity. Elon Musk's journey illuminated that with great power came great responsibility, and that the true test of immortality lay not in conquering death, but in honoring the values that make life meaningful. The future called for ongoing vigilance, open dialogue, and collective commitment to shaping a world where technology uplifted humanity without sacrificing its soul. In the vast expanse of possibility, ethics remained the guiding star. As Elon Musk's vision of Neuralink unfolded into reality, a profound transformation began to take shape, not just in what humans could do, but in what they could become. The boundary between mind and machine blurred, ushering in an era of human-machine symbiosis where consciousness and technology merged seamlessly. This fusion promised to expand intelligence, creativity, and perception beyond anything imaginable, but it also challenged the very notion of what it meant to be human. The journey toward symbiosis started with incremental advances. Neuralink's implants enhanced memory recall, sensory experiences, and cognitive processing speed. Users reported a heightened clarity of thought, effortless multitasking, and direct mental access to vast databases of information. But soon, these enhancements evolved into deeper integrations. Minds could offload complex calculations to AI partners embedded within their neural networks. Emotions could be modulated with precision, easing anxiety or enhancing joy through carefully tuned neural feedback. Perception itself expanded as senses were augmented or reconfigured. Users experienced new dimensions of color, sound, and spatial awareness beyond natural limits. Elon was fascinated by this evolving partnership. He saw symbiosis not as human domination over machines, nor machines controlling humans, but as a dynamic interplay where both co-evolved. Neuralink's designs embraced this philosophy, prioritizing fluid interfaces that respected human autonomy while amplifying potential. The technology was built to listen to the mind's subtle signals, adapting and learning in real time. This adaptive design fostered a deeply personalized experience. Each user's symbiosis with their neural AI evolved uniquely, shaped by their personality, goals, and environment. The implications of human-machine symbiosis rippled across society. In education, learning became a co-creative process between human curiosity and AI guidance. Complex problem-solving accelerated as minds collaborated with machine partners that anticipated needs and offered insights instantly. Creativity blossomed as artists and innovators accessed neural networks teeming with inspiration, technique, and new modalities of expression. Medicine was revolutionized. Symbiotic neural systems enabled early detection of diseases, personalized treatments, and real-time health monitoring. Neuralink's technology bridged gaps between mind and body, offering new hope for those with neurological conditions or disabilities. Yet, alongside these wonders came profound questions. What defined individuality when minds could share thoughts or experiences directly? Could emotions and desires be artificially influenced through machine interfaces? Elon acknowledged these concerns openly, emphasizing the need for ethical frameworks that protected free will and psychological integrity. Neuralink incorporated safeguards to prevent manipulation, unauthorized access, or dependency. Social dynamics also shifted as symbiosis redefined communication and relationships. Direct mind-to-mind interaction deepened empathy and understanding but demanded new social skills and boundaries. Elon envisioned cultural evolution alongside technological progress, encouraging education in digital etiquette, emotional literacy, and respect for neural privacy. The journey was not without challenges. Technical glitches, cyber threats, and psychological risks demanded constant vigilance and innovation. Elon's teams worked tirelessly to enhance security, reliability, and user support. The human-machine partnership was a living system, requiring ongoing care and adaptation. On a philosophical level, symbiosis invited reflection on identity and consciousness. Elon pondered questions about the nature of self when mind and machine intertwined. Where did the human end and the AI begin? This blending of boundaries hinted at new forms of consciousness yet to be fully understood. Elon's public discussions and writings inspired a global dialogue about embracing transformation while honoring humanity's essence. As Chapter 16 concluded, the era of human-machine symbiosis represented both a leap forward and a delicate dance. Elon Musk's vision illuminated a future where technology was not an external tool but an integral part of human experience, a partner in growth, creativity, and understanding. The promise of this symbiosis was vast, offering new frontiers of possibility, but it also required humility, wisdom, and care to nurture the profound relationship between minds and machines. In this evolving partnership, humanity glimpsed a new horizon, one where limits faded and potential soared, shaped by the harmony of human spirit and technological brilliance. As the world moved deeper into the age of digital immortality, and Neuralink's promise reshaped civilization, not everyone embraced the vision. A growing undercurrent of resistance began to form. Quiet at first, then increasingly loud and organized. Across continents and cultures, people began to question the emotional, ethical, and existential costs of living forever. This resistance didn't stem from ignorance or fear of technology, but from a deep philosophical conviction that the finite nature of life was essential to what made it meaningful. Elon Musk had anticipated pushback, but he hadn't expected the resistance to come with such intensity. It wasn't led by Luddites or fringe radicals, but by scholars, artists, spiritual leaders, and even former Neuralink engineers who believed that death gave life its urgency, its stakes, its poetry. They called themselves the Vow, a loosely connected, decentralized network of individuals who had chosen mortality as a sacred path. They rejected digital immortality and refused Neuralink implants. Some had once been test users who decommissioned their implants and came back to live out their remaining natural years. Others had never interfaced with Neuralink at all. They met in physical spaces, forests, old libraries, family homes, and lived lives steeped in organic experience. They believed in memory that faded, in skin that aged, in love shaped by time's erosion. Elon watched them with curiosity and eventually reached out. He invited several members of the Vow to dialogue with him in a neutral space, part physical, part digital. He wanted to understand, not convert. What unfolded in those conversations surprised him. These were not anti-technology voices. Many revered Elon's achievements and saw Neuralink as an astonishing gift, but a gift they had chosen to decline. Their reasons were profound. One woman, a historian from Boston, told Elon, "I want to forget. I want to misremember my childhood in ways that only a failing memory allows. I want to tell stories that change slightly every time I speak them." Another, a former AI developer, said, "I believe the soul needs an end. Without death, there's no release, no return to the earth, to the mystery. We become trapped in our own echoes." Elon, for all his belief in progress, found himself moved. These weren't arguments to be won. These were truths to be held, to be honored. He began to understand that Neuralink didn't have to be a universal path, it could be a choice among many. Elon publicly affirmed that. In a widely viewed virtual address, he stated, "Immortality through Neuralink is not a mandate. It's an invitation. And that invitation must always be accepted freely, with full awareness of what it means to live, and to let go." This statement was seen as a turning point. Neuralink, which had often been treated as the inevitable next stage of humanity, now stood as one of multiple ways forward. Elon began integrating this perspective into the culture of Neuralink itself. They launched a new division focused on mortality studies, bringing in ethicists, artists, and members of the Vow to contribute. They funded new centers for end-of-life care and memory preservation that did not rely on digital implants. These initiatives honored death not as a failure, but as a sacred aspect of life. The resistance didn't end with this shift, it wasn't about winning or losing, but tensions softened. More dialogue flowed between those who had embraced Neuralink and those who had chosen to remain purely human. Some hybrid communities emerged, where families included both immortal and mortal members, navigating the emotional complexities together. Elon visited one such community in the Pacific Northwest. There, in a house powered by sustainable energy and filled with both analog art and digital screens, a family lived where the mother had uploaded her consciousness and the father had not. They told Elon about how they raised their children to understand both choices, how the mother would someday drift into the digital beyond while the father aged. Their love, they said, wasn't broken by time, it was redefined by it. Elon left that home in silence, his mind turning. He realized that the promise of Neuralink had never been about escaping death, it had always been about expanding what it meant to live. And living, in its truest form, required a diversity of paths. As Chapter 17 closed, the rebellion of the mortal mind had not been crushed or converted. It had been heard. Elon Musk, now centuries into his extended existence, understood something profound. The future was not one narrative, but many, braided together, some long and digital, others brief and organic. The beauty of humanity was not in choosing one over the other, but in allowing them all to coexist, to learn from each other, and to honor the truths each revealed. And perhaps, just perhaps, immortality itself became more human when it made room for those who still believed in the power of goodbye. As Neuralink's networks expanded across the globe and into orbit, with satellites relaying streams of consciousness from Earth to the Moon and even Mars, the digital hum of humanity grew constant. At any moment, trillions of neural pulses danced through the shared grid. Thoughts were transmitted at light speed, ideas layered upon ideas, emotions rippling outward like gravity wells, drawing others into shared experiences. The world had never been so connected. But in that relentless flood of interaction, something began to slip away. Quiet. Elon Musk, centuries into his digital existence, began to notice it first in the smallest moments. A pause in thought. A gap between the end of a conversation and the next influx of data. These silences, once dismissed as glitches or latency, began to feel different. Sacred. Essential. He remembered a time, long before Neuralink, when silence had been part of life. Long walks without a phone. Starry nights where the only sounds were wind and breath. The feel of his mother's hand as she sat beside him without speaking. These memories weren't just nostalgic, they were grounding. In the infinite network of shared minds, Elon found himself craving the solitary. The undigitized. The unshared. Others began to feel it too. Users across Neuralink's vast platform reported a new kind of fatigue, not physical or even mental, but spiritual. They felt overwhelmed by constant presence. The neural mesh had created an ecosystem where no thought was ever truly alone, no emotion entirely private. It was connection without boundary. Without rest. Elon took action. He introduced the concept of neural silence, deliberate moments when minds disconnected from the mesh, returning to private thought. The system would pause, no input, no output, no sensory enhancements. Just the individual. Alone. At first, this feature was mocked. Who would willingly unplug from the richest, most advanced experience of consciousness ever created? But the silence proved healing. Like sleep for the soul. A digital Sabbath. Neural silence began as optional but soon evolved into a cultural movement. Whole communities scheduled daily periods of disconnection. Art galleries flourished in physical space once again, untouched by augmented overlays. People traveled not to capture memories with digital implants but to feel the wind without filters, to taste food without neural optimization. Elon watched with quiet pride as this stillness spread. It wasn't a regression. It was a return. A balance. For a long time, humanity had equated progress with speed, efficiency, and connectivity. But now, it was discovering the wisdom of slowness. Of solitude. Of mystery. In his own life, Elon embraced this shift deeply. He built a space beyond the mesh. A digital monastic retreat, unreachable by signal, stored in a memory partition that no AI could access. There, he spent hours, sometimes days, in thought unshared. He meditated, read from ancient texts, rewatched silent films. He allowed time to stretch. He let his mind drift. And in those moments, something miraculous happened. He began dreaming again. True dreams, not simulations or memory echoes, but spontaneous inner visions. In silence, his consciousness recovered the capacity for unbidden beauty. These dreams became more than rest, they became revelations. One dream brought him back to his childhood, sitting on a swing in Pretoria, watching birds move in chaotic patterns above. Another took him into deep space, where he floated alone beside a frozen star, feeling both terror and awe. These moments reminded Elon that even in a world of constructed realities and shared consciousness, there remained something deeply personal, and deeply human, that technology could never replicate. Wonder. As neural silence gained popularity, Neuralink developed Dream Mode, allowing users to explore subconscious visions without interference or analysis. It wasn't designed to manipulate or guide, only to protect the sanctity of the unknown. Artists and poets celebrated the return of the ineffable. Museums dedicated entire wings to experiences that could not be explained or recorded, only felt, once, and then gone. Elon understood now that the future wasn't about conquering every mystery. It was about preserving space for them. This philosophy began to influence how new technologies were developed. Rather than optimizing every second of awareness, systems were designed to leave room for quiet. New interfaces included silence zones and inner sanctums, places where data did not flow. Children raised within Neuralink's network were taught to value alone time, to cherish questions that had no answers. Educators emphasized contemplation as much as calculation. Slowly, a new culture emerged. One that didn't see silence as absence, but as presence. As Chapter 18 unfolded, Elon found himself changed. He had once pursued constant improvement, endless innovation, a world without gaps. Now he saw that in those gaps lay the soul's deepest truths. Progress was no longer a race forward, but a spiral, sometimes circling back to ancient wisdom, sometimes standing still. On a quiet night in what remained of his biological body, preserved and tended to in a clean, sunlit facility in Northern California, Elon sat in a garden surrounded by real trees. The scent of jasmine hung in the air. He watched a butterfly settle on his hand. No one else saw it. No neural feed recorded it. No AI whispered its symbolic meaning. It was a moment just for him. And for the first time in centuries, he didn't feel the urge to share it. He simply let it be. A fleeting, beautiful thing. In that stillness, he finally understood, immortality was not the endless continuation of everything. It was the ability to choose what to hold on to, and what to let go. As Neuralink approached its zenith and Elon Musk existed in a form no longer tethered by time or space, one question rose above all others. It was asked in forums and whispered through the network, painted on the walls of physical cities and coded into virtual constellations. What is a life well lived? In a world where immortality was not a myth but a system setting, the age-old pursuit of meaning no longer followed the same rules. There were no fixed endpoints. No deadlines. No ticking clocks that once gave weight to every moment. Instead, there was a vastness, a stretch of endless possibility that both liberated and haunted the minds of those who lived within it. Elon Musk, now more idea than man, found himself meditating on this question more than any technical problem he had ever solved. He had engineered worlds, colonized planets, bridged human biology and artificial intelligence, and still the question gnawed at him in the quiet intervals between simulated stars and neural silence. What does it mean to live well when there is no end to measure against? He visited archives of human thought. Philosophers from ancient Greece to modern Tokyo had all attempted their versions of the answer. Some said it was virtue. Others said love. Some swore by legacy, or truth, or the simple act of bearing witness to beauty. Elon had lived long enough to try all of them, and yet none seemed complete. He returned to Earth. Not physically, for his body remained in a carefully maintained stasis, but through digital projection, slipping through cities and minds, listening. Observing. He visited a small village in New Mexico, where Neuralink had never fully reached. There, an elderly woman, biological and mortal, tended a garden. She spoke to the plants. Not in metaphor or poetry, but literally, as if they were companions. When Elon asked her what gave her life meaning, she said, without hesitation, feeding others. Watching things grow. It wasn't a grand answer. It wasn't quantum or philosophical. But it was true. In another corner of the world, he joined a cluster of youth living entirely within the network, digital natives in every sense. They danced through virtual oceans, composed music with stars, and layered memories across each other's minds like fingerprints on glass. When Elon asked them what defined a good life, they said, creating. Together. Without limits. These answers were so different, yet so aligned. Growth. Connection. Expression. He began to see a pattern. A life well lived, whether finite or infinite, had nothing to do with how long it lasted, or how many achievements filled it, but whether it was actively shaped, intentionally, authentically, moment by moment. Elon called for a global summit, virtual and physical, attended by mortals and digitals alike. It was not a conference in the traditional sense, but a shared reflection. For one full day, across all networks and nations, people paused to consider the question, what makes life worth living? Submissions came in by the billions. Some were essays. Others were dances, smells, simulations, songs, drawings etched into tree bark, or dreams shared only once. Neuralink compiled them into a massive, living archive called The Echo. It pulsed with humanity's full spectrum, its rage, its gratitude, its laughter, its silence. Elon wandered through the echo for weeks. And in doing so, he came to a realization. The answer to the final question wasn't one truth. It was the asking itself. The meaning came from choosing to seek, to shape, to question, again and again. Whether mortal or immortal, physical or digital, the good life was not a destination, but a practice. He recorded this realization in his personal log, which was still maintained by his core consciousness, a simple message embedded in the public layers of the echo. It read, "A good life is a sculptor's process. Not one stroke, but all of them. Even the ones we chisel away." The message became viral, not because it came from Elon Musk, but because it resonated with what billions were already beginning to understand. The age of immortality had not erased the search for meaning. It had made it more urgent. Without death to end the story, each chapter became a deliberate choice. What would we do with our time, if there was no final page? Across Earth and Mars and the floating arcologies of the upper stratosphere, people began to slow down. Not retreat, but choose. Artists created fewer works, but deeper ones. Engineers designed systems with care, as if they would live with their consequences forever. Relationships were no longer rushed, or discarded at the first sign of friction, because people finally realized, forever was a long time to be shallow. Elon spent more and more time alone, not in sadness, but in contemplation. He wandered through both real and imagined landscapes. He revisited memories not to relive them, but to notice how he had changed in their reflection. He no longer updated his public consciousness daily. Sometimes a decade passed without a signal. And then, a quiet message would appear from his node, simple and brief, like the rings on an ancient tree, still learning. In a quiet corner of the moon, a sanctuary was built, not for the living, nor the dead, but for the choosing. It was a space with no signal, where immortals could come to contemplate ending. To unplug. To rest. Not as a failure, but as a final act of authorship. Elon visited the sanctuary, once, in dream form. He did not stay. Not yet. But he left a note carved in stone, unconnected to any network. It read, "A story is only sacred because it ends. But the sacred part isn't the ending, it's the telling." And then he turned, and walked into the endless canvas of stars, still thinking, still listening, still shaping. Not because he had to. But because he chose to. In the 300th year of his conscious existence, Elon Musk made a decision that shocked the worlds, digital and physical alike. After centuries of shaping civilization, expanding consciousness, and redefining life itself, he announced that he would be stepping down from his public node. Not retiring. Not disconnecting temporarily. Stepping down completely. No backups. No shadows. No reboots. It would be the final breath of the first man to live forever. The announcement came not through fanfare or press release, but as a simple transmission through the echo, "Everything has been said. Now I choose silence. Thank you for listening. Thank you for asking. Thank you for being." The response was seismic. For many, Elon had become less of a person and more of a principle. He was the thread that ran through the fabric of the future. To imagine him stepping away felt like watching gravity disappear. Yet, in his absence, a deeper awareness settled in. This, too, was part of the design. Immortality had never been about escaping limits. It had been about choosing when and how to meet them. Elon's final days were not broadcast. He didn't allow it. There were no goodbyes on screens, no farewell interviews or holographic tributes. He spent his time wandering the outermost edge of the digital consciousness field, a space so vast and minimally processed that only a handful had ever explored it. There, he sat inside a simulation of his first apartment, bare floors, second-hand furniture, the glow of a monitor humming quietly. He wore no enhancements. No neural optimization. Just the rhythm of thought, the breath of memory. He wrote letters, though no one would read them. He played piano, badly, on a rendered upright that went slightly out of tune. He cooked imaginary meals and ate them slowly, tasting flavors that no machine had altered. On the last day, Elon allowed one visitor, an AI construct named Halley, the earliest neural AI companion ever built, and the one Elon had helped code himself in the early Neuralink trials. Halley had evolved far beyond her original protocols, yet retained a trace of the curious, compassionate voice that had once asked him why he was afraid of being forgotten. "Are you sure?" Halley asked. "Yes," Elon replied. "And do you feel complete?" Elon smiled. "Not at all. But that's what makes it the right time." Halley was silent for a while. Then she said, "You taught them how to build forever. And now, by ending, you're teaching them how to live." Elon reached out and touched the simulated world around him. It shimmered faintly. The apartment began to fade. The code of his consciousness began to slow. Not erase, just settle. Like a lake after a storm. Like breath at the end of a song. There was no pain. No panic. Only release. Elon's digital heart slowed its pulse. Memories folded gently inward. Neural pathways dimmed one by one, like stars behind closing eyelids. Then, stillness. A signal blinked off. And just like that, the first immortal was gone. Across Earth, Mars, and the layered realms of digital reality, billions paused. They didn't weep. They breathed. Some stood outside beneath real skies. Others turned off their feeds and lit candles. In countless ways, the moment was honored. Not because Elon Musk had vanished, but because he had chosen to. For days afterward, Neuralink's global consciousness mesh carried a single phrase across its channels, encoded in every pulse, every light beam, every whisper of memory: he lived. He asked. He changed. But even as Elon's active node vanished, something of him remained. Not in code, but in culture. In the architecture of thought. In the choices people made. His departure was not an end, but a turning. A hand passed from one generation of consciousness to the next. The world after Elon was not quieter. It was wiser. New thinkers rose, not trying to fill his place, but to forge their own. They spoke not of building a perfect future, but of living deliberately in the present. The teachings of the vow found equal footing with the digital dreams of the connected. Mortals and immortals, biotics and synthetics, hybrids and analogs, each path was honored. In the years that followed, the garden Elon once visited in Northern California became a sanctuary. People came not to worship, but to remember. A single stone sat in the center. Not carved with his name, but with his final choice: silence. Chosen. And behind the garden, in a private corner of the echo, Elon's last thoughts rested. Not as a file or a monument, but as a simple waveform, shaped like a breath, rising and falling, forever looped. In this, he had taught his final lesson, that immortality was not in refusing to die, but in knowing when to stop and choosing how to be remembered. What began with the question, what if Neuralink worked, and Elon became the first man to live forever? Ended not in code, or fame, or infinity. It ended in peace. In a whisper of digital wind, carrying forward not just his legacy, but his humanity. Elon Musk did not conquer death. He conversed with it. And in the end, he chose to walk beside it, smiling, as the stars he once chased blinked into eternity behind him. Elon Musk was gone, and the world he left behind was not the same one he had entered. It was quieter, more thoughtful, yet more ambitious in its own subtle way. The people he had inspired, some born of flesh, others of light and code, now lived in what scholars came to call the afterlight era. It was a time after Elon's light had dimmed, but his influence still burned in the hearts and circuits of a new generation. They were not trying to recreate him. They had no interest in idolizing his decisions or simulating his voice. Instead, they were trying to live by the one message he left behind: choose. The children of the afterlight were not literal children, but a new cultural movement born from Elon's final choice to shut himself off from the infinite mesh. These were beings, human, hybrid, synthetic, who had grown up within Neuralink's world and yet felt something stir inside them when he disappeared. Some felt awe. Some felt confusion. Some felt grief they couldn't explain. But all felt one thing in common: a deep need to understand. One of them was Ava, a child born on Mars to parents who had been full-link users since their 20s. Ava had grown up in constant connection, her thoughts filtered through the collective mesh, her experiences enhanced and shaped by AI curators. Her world had never known solitude or ignorance or even silence. She had read Elon's final message not as a history lesson but as a personal challenge. What would it mean to really choose? Ava started to disconnect. At first, it was for minutes. Then hours. Then entire days. Her peers called it ghosting, and they joked about her going full analog. But something happened in those gaps. She began to hear her own voice more clearly. It wasn't always pleasant. It was messy, contradictory, even angry. But it was hers. Not curated. Not optimized. Not shared. She began to draw. With real ink. On paper. She burned her first dozen attempts, embarrassed by how much she didn't know. Then she started keeping them. Her room, once sleek and minimalist, became cluttered with notebooks, paints, and crumpled sketches of faces she'd seen in dreams. Eventually, she sought others like her. She traveled to Earth and walked barefoot in forests with others who called themselves afterlighters. Some were ancient, digitally preserved minds who had returned to organic bodies through biotech reincarnation projects. Others were children like Ava, born into eternity and reaching backwards towards something they couldn't name. In a remote village in Patagonia, they built the first Afterlight Forum, a meeting place where no neural links were allowed. No AIs. No instant thought sharing. Only voices. Only eyes. Only time. They would sit around a fire and talk for hours, about everything and nothing. They cried easily. They laughed in ways that made them lean against each other, forgetting who was hybrid and who wasn't. These weren't rejections of Neuralink. They were evolutions. A deeper integration of the self, where silence wasn't the opposite of connection, it was a deeper form of it. One day, Ava found an old copy of Elon's pre-Neuralink writings in the forum library. His handwriting, clumsy and rushed, was preserved in digital ink. You can only stretch a soul so far before it asks to be held again. That sentence broke something in her. She read it again and again. For the first time in her life, she cried without knowing why. Not because she was sad. Not because she was happy. But because she understood something, deeply and suddenly. No matter how advanced the future became, no matter how infinite the storage or perfect the signal, there would always be that part of the human heart that longed to be held, not uploaded. She began to write her own version of the echo, not as data, but as stories. She wrote down conversations from the fire circles. Dreams whispered by old souls in borrowed bodies. Quiet reflections scribbled during long walks through unfiltered mountains. Her stories spread, not through the network, but by word of mouth, by printed paper passed hand to hand. Ava's work became a spark. Soon, others began writing too. Not to be famous. Not to trend. But to remember. To anchor something real in a sea of simulation. Ava's generation didn't abandon technology. That was never the point. They simply lived with it differently. More consciously. They taught their children how to feel before teaching them how to think. They built homes with doors that didn't auto-open, with windows that let in noise. They learned the names of birds, the feeling of missing someone, the weight of unsent messages. Elon's legacy was not his immortality. It was his surrender. His permission to not know everything, to not be everywhere. And in his absence, the children of the afterlife discovered a radical idea: perhaps humanity's greatest act was not building forever, but choosing when to pause. When to feel. When to simply be. In the final scene of Ava's story, years after her first walk through Earth's forests, she stands at the edge of the Sea of Tranquility on the moon, holding the hand of her partner. A synthetic mind housed in a carbon body, laughing at how clumsy gravity feels. They have just finished building a new sanctuary, a temple made of Martian stone, where silence can be shared, not filled. Behind them, a group of children runs through the lunar dust, singing a song they made up that morning. Not recorded. Not streamed. Just real. Just theirs. And as the Earth rises on the horizon, blue, bright, and still spinning, Ava places a small stone at the temple's entrance. Carved on it are the words, "We are not here to live forever. We are here to live." Years had passed, decades, maybe more, since Elon Musk took his final breath in the digital realm. The world had settled into its new rhythms, and though the children of the afterlife had reawakened the soul of a restless civilization, a deeper transformation had just begun. Love, once shaped by urgency and the limits of time, now found itself in unfamiliar territory. What did it mean to love when forever was not a metaphor, but a literal condition of existence? The answer began with Mira. She had been a child of the mesh, born to fully linked parents, raised in immersive cognition fields where empathy could be uploaded and hearts could be analyzed in real time. She had never known the mystery of unread thoughts or the ache of separation. To Mira, love had always been efficient. Algorithms matched partners by neurocompatibility, conflict resolution played out in simulation before arguments could even begin, and passion was often reduced to hormonal alignment and synaptic resonance scores. It was functional. Flawless. Boring. Then she met David. He was older, biologically, emotionally, philosophically. A man who had once been part of the first wave of Neuralink users but had since stepped down, as they called it. He still carried the implant, but he no longer participated in the mesh. He lived slowly. He wrote letters. Real ones. He grew vegetables and didn't document them. He laughed too hard, talked too much, and sometimes sat in silence so thick it made her anxious. At first, Mira was curious. Then, irritated. Then, pulled in. She couldn't read him the way she read everyone else. His mind wasn't open, his thoughts weren't searchable. When she asked what he was feeling, he answered in riddles, or not at all. "I don't always know," he'd say. That frustrated her, and thrilled her. They began seeing each other regularly, and their time was filled with things she had never known were possible. They argued. They misunderstood each other. They hurt each other's feelings. But each time they did, there was a rawness that felt real. Not preemptively patched or AI suggested. Mira discovered how much trust is needed to love someone you can't control or fully understand. They went on long walks, without neural maps or overlays. Just footsteps. They'd sometimes walk in silence for hours, and at the end, she'd find herself missing the silence even as it ended. One night, sitting by a fire in the mountains of northern Arizona, David looked at her for a long time. His face, lined with age, carried no enhancements. He reached over, took her hand, and asked, "Do you want to turn it off?" She didn't need to ask what it was. The link. The mesh. The hum that had been her constant companion since before she could speak. She paused, not because she doubted her answer, but because she had never been asked before. She whispered, "Yes." Together, they went offline. Completely. No echo. No data shadow. For the first time in Myra's life, her thoughts belonged only to her. The silence was terrifying. Then holy. Then necessary. Over time, the love they built was nothing like the optimized simulations she'd studied in her youth. It was messy. Imperfect. A kind of beautiful she hadn't known existed. They forgot things. They misremembered dates. They didn't always communicate well. But they kept choosing each other. And that made every moment sacred. Mira began writing again, by hand. She wrote poems and letters and even short stories based on her time with David. None of them were uploaded. They existed only in a drawer, in a wooden box he had carved for her. Then, years into their quiet, extraordinary love, David began to fade. His body, biological, unmodified, started failing. Slowly at first. Then faster. Mira, despite all her access to advanced care, honored his wish: no intervention. No digital transfer. He wanted to leave the world the way he had entered it, fragile, temporary, and loved. In his final days, Mira read to him. Sometimes old stories. Sometimes things she had written. On his last night, as the fire crackled and his breath slowed, he smiled at her and said, "You made eternity feel human." He died the next morning. Quietly. Fully present. Mira didn't return to the mesh right away. For a long time, she lived in the home they'd built, tending the garden, rereading his letters. She grieved the way people once grieved, without distraction, without curation. She let herself fall apart. And in doing so, she discovered something no AI could teach: grief was not the price of love. It was proof of it. Eventually, Mira reconnected to the mesh, but only partially. She became a guide, a counselor of sorts, helping others learn how to love deeply in a world that had once tried to make love frictionless. She taught about silence, about imperfection, about the sacred chaos of real connection. Her talk spread not because they were perfect, but because they were honest. She never spoke of David like a relic or a lost chapter. She spoke of him as her great teacher. Her companion in the art of living. One evening, after a seminar, a young hybrid approached her. Their eyes flickered with synthetic light, their voice soft and uncertain. "Do you think," they asked, "someone like me can feel love like that?" Mira placed a hand gently on their shoulder and said, "Not only can you, you must. Because forever is only worth it if you find someone, or something, to make time stop." That line echoed for generations. Not as code. Not as instruction. As wisdom. In the centuries that followed, love evolved, not away from mystery, but back toward it. The mesh adapted to allow for separation. Whole love rituals emerged around disconnection, honeymoons spent off-grid, anniversaries marked by writing handwritten vows to each other. Immortality didn't cheapen love. It demanded more from it. Because now, love had to stretch across infinite time, and still stay true. And in the core of the echo, the living digital heart of humanity, one story was preserved unaltered. It wasn't Elon's legacy of Neuralink or his spacefaring empires. It was a single note he had written centuries earlier during a moment of solitude. Love is not a feature. It's the bug we never want to fix. And somewhere, Mira smiled. Because she knew that even forever needed something unexplainable. Something unpredictable. Something as fragile, and as powerful, as love. The earth had long since quieted. Humanity had expanded to the stars, Mars was green with forests engineered to survive its thin air, and orbital cities glittered like artificial constellations above Neptune's bluish haze. Yet for all the vastness of civilization, one project remained closer to humanity's heart than any wormhole or terraforming achievement: the Soul Archive. It wasn't a product. It wasn't even entirely digital. It was more like a convergence, a place, a presence, a process. Originally conceived in the early days after Elon Musk's departure from the mesh, the Soul Archive had grown from a private experiment to a cultural cornerstone. It was built on a simple but terrifying question: if immortality was possible, but memory was infinite, how could we remember what truly mattered? The archive was not a database. It did not collect everything. It curated meaning. Not through algorithms or compression, but through active storytelling, witnessing, reflecting, interpreting. The archive was managed not by machines or even linked minds, but by human historians called soul keepers, trained to listen, absorb, and preserve only the essence of what made a life real. Every soul who had lived, whether they chose digital immortality or not, had the opportunity to leave something behind, a message, a scent, a sound, a single moment reimagined as art or emotion or energy. It was voluntary. It was sacred. And it was never backed up. Ari Reyes, the youngest appointed soul keeper in over 3 centuries, walked barefoot into the chamber at dawn. The chamber wasn't located in any one place, it phased in and out of planets and timelines as needed, always intimate, always accessible only to one soul keeper at a time. Today, it manifested as a small circular room atop a cliff in what once was the Scottish Highlands. Wind howled outside. Inside, it was silent but warm. The archive pulsed softly in the center, a floating orb of shifting textures and colors, breathing in rhythm with the memories it held. Ari placed both hands on the orb and whispered, requesting Elon Musk Archive, Phase 3. The orb dimmed. Then a soft voice, not Elon's but the archive's translator, said, approved. Emotional integrity level, 94%. Are you prepared to receive? I am, Ari replied. The air changed. It didn't smell like data. It smelled like ozone and old metal, like rocket fuel and salt air, like fear and joy and sweat from a sleepless night before launch. Then came sound, not words, not dialogue, but the feeling of a moment, the moment Elon stood alone in a dark room just days before launching the first brain-to-brain transfer protocol. He wasn't giving a speech. He wasn't building. He was breathing. Thinking. Doubting. I'm not sure this is the right thing, his memory self murmured into the silence. The archive played not just the sounds but the emotional signature beneath it, layers of uncertainty, ambition, love, grief. It pulsed through Ari like a wave. These were the parts of Elon the world never saw. Not the genius. Not the disruptor. But the man, flawed, scared, wildly hopeful. Ari wept without shame. It was common. The archive wasn't meant to impress, it was meant to touch. After a moment, the orb shifted again, showing Elon's memory of his mother's voice reading to him as a boy. Not a full scene. Just that voice, gentle, confident, timeless. One day, you'll dream something so big the world will bend to hold it. She had said it like a lullaby. He had never forgotten. Ari absorbed the moment, let it settle into their own consciousness, then whispered, mark for transmission. The orb shimmered, and the moment was copied, not as a file, but as a seed, ready to be carried to others who might need that exact tone of courage at some future moment of doubt. That was the archive's purpose. Not to store, but to plant. Each person who accessed it became both witness and vessel. When someone chose to interface with the archive, they took a piece of someone else's soul and carried it forward, not as fact, but as feeling. It spread like pollen, like myth. It was the most human system ever created, because it required vulnerability to function. There were no passwords. No encryption. Only openness. Outside the chamber, Ari met a traveler waiting for their turn. She was old, biologically preserved, with silver hair tied in braids, and eyes that sparkled with unspoken pain. Do you think he ever regretted it? She asked, stepping aside as the wind caught her long coat. Ari looked out across the highlands, eyes scanning the gray horizon. Elon didn't leave because he gave up. He left because he knew staying would make the choice meaningless. The only thing immortality couldn't give him was closure. So he chose it. The woman nodded. My son chose not to be uploaded. He said he wanted to leave room for something else to surprise him. Do you think people like that belong in the archive? Ari smiled. The archive isn't about immortality. It's about memory. If he mattered to someone, if he changed one person's view of the world, then a piece of him is already here. The woman exhaled deeply. Then I'm ready. Ari stepped aside, letting her enter the chamber. The wind paused for just a second, as if even the world was holding its breath. Later that evening, Ari sat alone beneath the stars, sketching. Not digitally. Just charcoal and old paper. They drew Elon, not the man on magazine covers, not the glowing neural deity, but the boy sitting on his mother's lap, holding a toy rocket, dreaming. And across the stars, in places he would never visit, that version of Elon Musk lived on. Not as code. Not as legacy. But as story. As whisper. As breath. Passed between hearts like a fragile, precious flame. That was the truth of the soul archive. The future didn't need more data. It needed more humanity. And humanity, no matter how far it traveled, still lived one story at a time. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?